Good morning, welcome to Knob End, the place, not me. So we're going to have a look around, and here we are at a SSSI site. This is the top of it actually. We're near the locks at the moment, and it's a place which is commonly called Meccano Bridge, and you'll see why it's called Meccano Bridge. And behind me is Wellfield House. And how old is Wellfield House actually?
I'd assume it's Victorian, early Victorian.
Looking at the windows,
Yeah.
it's Georgian,
Georgian, yeah, Georgian, most likely. And as we go down here, not only is it an amazing historical place, it's also got an amazing habitats that really don't belong here. They're kind of foreign. So just quickly pan over. I'm going to get shouted at with Jodie, Simon, and Jasmine. We're going to walk down to Meccano Bridge, and I'll turn the camera around to show you. So as walking down here, we have got buddleia. We've got plenty of buddleia actually, which is beautiful. It's called the butterfly plant, and it's one of my favourite plants because it attracts so many butterflies. And we're at Moses Gate, Knob End. There's the canal that's been opened up. And as we go down, you'll see what is Meccano Bridge. And it's called Meccano Bridge because it's life-size Meccano pieces made into a real bridge from Meccano. It's exactly what it sounds like. And then across there, you've got two Meccano benches. There and there, and you've got the marker as well. I think that's for the distance between Bury, Bolton and the other areas. Off the top of my head,
There's an awesome view from here over to the paper mill.
It is beautiful. So down here is, how many lock gates are there on here now? Is it what, there's 1, 2?
Yeah, there's 3, and apparently there's multiple steps of 3.
Right.
So I think there's around 6 or 7 steps of 3 around this area.
That's really interesting. Yeah, so it's a beautiful location around here, and it's steeped in history. So we're going to start walking down to Knob End. So still cobbled around here, which is really nice. On the left hand side over here, there's a little message board with the history of that. And really, I'm not going to touch on the history of this too much because you've got all the information there, and it's better if people come down. That's the whole point of doing these videos. We hope it encourages people to come down and see this area. And as we're walking down, you've got ragwort with, I don't see any cinnabar moths actually.
Yeah.
Is there? Oh yeah, straight away. So we've got some cinnabar moths on the ragwort, which is always nice. You see the little fellas? Little girls or thingies, just right there. So that's the cinnabar moths, which have been introduced actually. So the cinnabar moths have been introduced because it's an issue of ragwort. It's poisonous to people, livestock especially. And behind me is a lot of information from the Manchester Bolton Bury Canal Society. And if you ever wanted to find out information about this area, they've already got it all laid out for you, which is really cool. And we're going to walk down to Knob End, the SSSI site. Now the SSSI site is a site of special scientific interest. And there's different levels of protection for our environment. So you have the site of biological importance, which is much lower down, but it is the second level of protection. And then they have different grades of site of biological importance, so a grade A, B and C. So for instance, if I were to say the gravel pits, the Dicyleva gravel pits, I think that's a grade B. There's the Dicyleva marshes, which not many people know about, but that's off Ratcliffe Road. And that's now in Breitmont, which is quite bizarre. I think that's a grade B as well. So as walking down, this here, which is left over, is the lockkeeper's cottage. So you can see where the door from there to there used to be. And you can still see kind of where the windows used to be from there, going up there. But there's absolutely nothing behind it. It's all gone, unfortunately. So you only end up with the front But on the right hand side, you can still see the windows, which I believe this was for the
Barge repair shop.
Yeah. So as Simon just said, up on the right hand side was a barge repair shop, and that's only recently, I think, been actually knocked down, the majority of it, hasn't it?
I think around the 70s.
No,
All right.
really recent.
Really recent.
Yeah, I think within the last 10 years, it was in such a dilapidated state that it was able to be knocked down. And I think they use it for parking cars now and stuff like that. Which is fair enough, because, I mean, it's kind of lost its use, unfortunately. So I'll turn the camera around.
Great view. Yeah.
Beautiful.
It is a really
Train
nice.
Come across here as well. The train comes right across.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which bit.
So it's not that long down here. You usually have you can see the canal just there. The swans quite often nest there. There's usually a couple that nest here at this location, and then further up on the canal, there's another couple that usually nest. So you can, when you're actually going along the canal, I'll turn it around so you can see me. So when you're going along the canal, often you'll be within a metre of the swans, and they're quite friendly on that side, going that way. Unfortunately, I think it was even this year, the swans towards Bury were shot and killed by local morons with their rifles. What can you do, unfortunately? Swapping hands. So, we're nearly there. So right through the middle of Knob End runs a pipeline, a sewage pipeline, and it leads to what is called Wilson's Bridge. Wilson's Bridge was being closed for, I think it must have been 6 years or something ridiculous. So Wilson's Bridge was closed for 6 years at least. Now we're at the part where you can loop around. If you go to Crompton Lodges, you can walk along, and we're walking into Knob End now. Right, so we'll start talking a little bit about the history of Knob End and why this site's so important. So as I turn around, you can see behind me we've got probably cow parsley. I don't like doing the carrot fan there. On this side we've got fireweed all the way through there, bit of brambles, bit of heather, I'm still working up hawthorn, which the hawthorn needs to go, the brambles need to go, and actually the fireweed needs to go, which is a little shame because it is quite beautiful, both of them actually. All on the side of the site along there, loads of hawthorn, that also needs to be chopped down along with the fireweed. And why does it need to be chopped down? It's because of the history of the site, why this site is so important. So we're just going to walk down to the bench. I'm going to sit down because I'm lazy and because it's really early, because I've not had a tea or a coffee. And also be able to show you, point out little things when we're over here at the bench. So the history of the site, back in the 1770s, I think it was. It started 1760 till about 1830s. Chemical works was on the site here, and I believe the family was Rawson. Yeah, the family was called Rawson, who actually owned this, and it was a really wealthy business for them. They did really well out of it. And what they did was they imported sulphur or brimstone from Sicily, in Italy, and when it was brought here they transformed it into sulphuric acid, and that sulphuric acid was then used in the paper industry and textile industry. But during that period it's quite a new industry and there's quite a lot of money being made, so nobody really cared about the damage that was taking place. Now if you're creating sulphuric acid back in the 1760s and 1830s, you're making a lot of acid gas, and that acid gas was just deposited all around this area. So all the trees, the wildlife, the farmers who are trying to raise the cattle, everything's dying. And the landowner, there's no legislation against him to actually resolve what he's causing, the impact of this. Now in about 1830, the industry was sold to a Edward Wilson, and Edward Wilson decided to change it from just being the production of sulfuric acid to include sulfuric acid being changed into it's carbon. I'm terrible with chemical names.
Sodium carbonate.
Sodium carbonate. So that was then used for like making soap. So it's kind of like around the period where, you know, Lord Levium starts appearing with the soap industry, and he becomes a millionaire by that point. But what happens is they use a LeBlanc method, which was mated by a French industrialist who went bankrupt with it, which is kind of a bit of a foreshadowing because the method really isn't that productive. For every ton of product they actually make, there's 2 tons of waste product. And of course, being this period, the Victorian period, they don't care about the environment. They decide to dump all that tons of waste every time they make 1 ton around the entire site on here. So where I'm stood at the moment, near the bench, this would have been the location where you would have had the factory. And the factory would have had a 120 metre chimney. And the reason why it had a 120 metre chimney is because they realised that if they make the chimney high enough, when the gases are being emitted from this, then the local residents aren't being affected, but those much further away are being affected, but you can't prove it was them. Still, you kind of use that method to this day. That's why we have chimneys that are so tall. So, you know, we don't affect our local population, but it can affect everyone else, and who cares. So what that actually led to is a 10 metres in height increase on the site of waste product that was alkali. On top of that, you had the boiler ash, which was deposited as well, which made it acidic. Now, over time, by the about 1890s, the site was abandoned. It was no longer productive. They tried to sell it, didn't work. When they came to demolish it, 2 workers were killed when it was demolished, and in the end it was set on fire and basically torn down, and that was the end of it, and it was taken off site. Most of the time they just push it into the river or the brook, because that's the kind of thing that they did. From about the 1900s to about 1950, there's not much information of what actually occurred on this site. There's some references to being used for cattle, there's some references to be used for poultry. In general, there's rarely any pictures or documentation regarding what happens, because it just basically becomes land for the cattle. Not very interesting. Now in 1954, something did interesting happen. So in 1954, some Bolton school lads came down to this site, picked a load of the flowers, came back to Bolton school, showed the teachers, and the teachers were quite baffled, said, "Where'd you get these? They don't grow in Bolton, it's not possible for them to grow in Bolton." And when they came down here and actually started doing studies, they found thousands, not hundreds, not 10, thousands of orchids on this site. And what had actually happened was that the site had become weathered over time, and it had made the site suitable for orchids, because it had turned it into a oh god, I hate this term.
Calcius.
No, the other one. I've actually had to write this down because I can never pronounce it correctly. Here's calciculous calciculous grassland, which is basically to say this grassland has become like a limestone sand dune grassland, and it's become one of the only 4 places in the world to actually have this unique properties, hence why it's a SSSI site. It's a site of special scientific interest. Not only is it a special site of scientific interest because of the contents of the soil being dumped here, 10 metres of waste product, alkali soil, it's also really important because of the type of plants that grow here. So you have a combination of plants that shouldn't grow together, which are growing together. And then you have an abundance of those plants all really close together on top of the chemical byproducts. So the best way to think about this is, if you think of the Cotswold, basically someone has basically taken a big chunk of the Cotswold and dumped it in the middle of Greater Manchester. So you can go over the whole of Greater Manchester and you won't find another location like this. This is entirely unique, and it's really quite funny in some ways, because what you end up with is a not just this brilliant area for the orchids, you end up with weird kind of mutated ones from the soil substrate, which has made them like bonsai. So we've got giant hogweed, which is encroaching on the area, and like up ahead over there's a bonsai giant hogweed, which looks like a native hogweed, but I can tell it's giant. It's a very peculiar place. So like, for instance, you'd have orchids growing, but the orchids only grow to like 2 inches, 3 inches tall maximum. Now I'm going to walk over to the orchids now, because I think that's enough talking about the history. Oh, and just say quickly, the reason why it's called Knob End is because Wellfield Heath is it used to be an old term meaning rounded promontory. So it was back then, Knob End wasn't this slang that we use today. It just meant it was overlooking the entire area. So bit unfortunate name nowadays, but we're going to walk you through this area, and as I'm walking through you'll see how beautiful the abundance, the fireweed or rosebay willow herb is. So I'm just going to switch the camera around. So it's just full of it, this area. It's a really nice area. It's one of these areas you really need to come down and see. So if you want to get to this area, you do need to come through Little Lever and what's the road called at the top? Bosco Road. Bosco Road near the top. So I'm going to walk over and show you the orchids now. So usually when we get to a place, we'll find like 5 orchids. You go to Leaving Park and I can probably find you about 8 orchids altogether in the entire area. Where I am now, there's hundreds of orchids of each species. So just behind me, it's full of fragrant orchids, it's full of common spotted orchids, and it's full of marsh hellebore orchids. Now those are the 3 that we found, and I think I might have found the green hellebore orchid as well. So we're going to show you what those are, and I'll keep the camera on it so you can identify it. So I don't particularly like going off the path, but I'm just going to make sure I don't stand on anything. So that is the fragrant orchid, and it's called the fragrant orchid because it actually does have a nice smell to it. So even from this distance, when it being a bit wet, you can smell it. So it's quite easily identifiable, so you can see the spike to it kind of thing. And if you want to see the orchids, it's between May, June and July. You can probably see them in August, but the best time to see them is during this period. So this section of Knob End, wow, what a beautiful day, is full of orchids. So you can see over here, everywhere we go, fragrant orchids in abundance. And the interesting thing, as you can see, we've got a lot of hawthorn trying to grow. And this is the important thing, is it's trying to grow and not succeeding. So if you look at the hawthorn, this could have been 5 years, 10 years old hawthorn, and it doesn't make sense until you realise that it's stunted because of the soil substrate under here and just how restrictive it is in what it allows to grow. So we're going to walk over this way and show you some marsh hellebore orchids. I'm being very careful where I walk because is that lady's bedstraw?
Lady's bedstraw, yeah.
Yeah, the whitish. I think it is. Yeah, it's over there is the best example. That's lady's bedstraw there. So what you're going to get is, you're going to end up with plants that you normally would really see in Bolton or Greater Manchester even. You're going to see an abundance of orchids you'll never see anywhere in the whole of Greater Manchester. You can go all over the Greater Manchester, you will never find as many orchids in one single place. And this is on your doorstep in Moses Gate. So if you wanted, you can park at Moses Gate, Crompton Lodges, make your way along the river, and inevitably takes you to this location, and you can cross over back onto Wilson's Bridge and walk back the other way now. So Wilson's Bridge has been repaired, which is really nice. I'll switch the camera around. I mean, look, orchids everywhere we go. And these are all fragrant orchids. In fact, I'm seeing more fragrant orchids than I am the common spotted. I'm just going to walk you to, and you're seeing just in between, I believe, this little one, which is everywhere, is bird's foot trefoil, I believe. I said because it's in a habitat I'm not familiar with. I I can only tell you what I believe it to be. So we're just going to take you to the marshmallow balm. You've got thistles, but even the thistles, they're all stunted. The brambles stunted, everything is stunted. It's a really unusual place. So you can probably see the white coming up. And here we have the other orchid. This little white one. That is the marsh hellebore. And I'm probably pronouncing hellebore wrong because I've not heard anyone else pronounce it. I've only read the name. And there's quite a lot of it. Can you see all the white? So throughout this area, where all the white is, you can see it just little, all around here. That is an orchid as well. And it grows in kind of like a creeping vine kind of effect to it, the marsh hellebore. So it grows in patches of it. And then suddenly you get some area next to it and it stops instantly. Whereas the fragrant orchid, you'll find it spotted throughout the entire area. And I'll just show you the common spotted orchid. The common spotted orchid is the one that you're going to see everywhere. The common spotted is the one that have Moses Gate, Levian Park, 7 acres. In fact, do we find it at 7 acres?
Do you know, I've not seen it at 7 acres. We have seen it at Leisure Room and we have seen it at
Gravel pits.
The gravel pits.
Yeah, we've not really seen the... oh right, so we've got some common spotted orchid here. You can see the difference, which I want to show you so you can tell the difference. So that's common spotted. And you've seen the little pattern they have on the flowers. You see? Common spotted. It's got a nice little pattern on the petals. It's the same with the... It looks somewhat similar, but there's a pattern on them. And that's one of the easiest ways to tell. There's not much common spotted, which is quite weird really. And they're surrounded by bird's foot trefoil. We've got some vetch. So yeah, it's a really beautiful place to come down and actually see. It's well worth the time. And you've only got... Oh my God, trees for you. You've only got really this month. If you want to come and see this site, park up at Cranston Lodges. Nice little walk along the river. And it's kind of inevitable that you'll come across this way. You kind of have to get to Wilson's Bridge and make your way around. So it's a nice little circular trip you can make. And if you wanted, you could just walk up the road as well and go to Meccano Bridge and have a look at Meccano Bridge. Do you think there's anything else that's quite interesting about history and about this site?
I'll tell you what I did find out about the waste product. The bluish, it used to be blue, and the locals called it galligoo.
Galligoo. And they also called this area the vats as well, because of the containers that they had here, which was used for storing the chemicals and other things. And the sections all over the site, which had mining pits. So some of them are fenced off still. The last time I checked they were. I'm not sure if the wood's still there fencing it off. You've also got the canal dock section, kind of, I don't know the correct term for it.
Apparently in this section here are some barges that are buried. Now I'm not sure where about approximately 30 to 40
Right.
are buried in dry dock.
Didn't know that. They also say apparently there was a mill on site going before the 1760s, and that mill could have been buried under all the waste, because back then they were notorious for just pushing things over. And they were also actually used a lot of the stone for making new industry or even new houses. So we're going to walk over to show you the alkali and the substrate, because at certain places it is exposed. My arm is dying at the moment. Woo.
Now you know what it's like for me, Chris.
So we're walking through to the main path that takes you to Wilson's Bridge. You'll be able to recognise this, it's very distinct. It's not that big a site. And there's not many trees on here. I mean, you've got silver birch, one silver birch, there's some silver birch at the top, but predominantly the site's covered in hawthorn. You could really do with some management actually. Because for me personally, I would take down the fireweed. It's in abundance everywhere. It's pretty common, but it'd be considered invasive on this site. The goldfinch.
Goldfinch, yes.
Yeah. Got a nice little goldfinch flying around this morning. Turn the camera around. You just see them? They're just off for a little mooch. But really on this right hand side, all this, which is the roseberry willow herb, is basically scrub now. So the orchids aren't going to grow in there, they've got no chance. That really needs to be cut down, and really it should be cut down, because this is a SSSI site. And I believe under the management plan of the rangers, I just mentioned as well that the best book by far on information regarding Knob End is by Phil Sharples, and he's done Knob End History, Management and Development. Now if you just Google that, Phil Sharples Knob End History, Management and Development, it's a really detailed book. He's done a lot of research, and to his credit we've used a lot of that information today, which has been really helpful to be able to actually do this guided walk. There's no way I would have been able to get the details like I have done today without his work. Can't believe it's actually cleared up. This morning it looked like it's going to throw it down.
Yeah, it does look nice there.
So a few years ago when I used to come out on here, this area in front of me, which is now Wilson's Bridge is there, that area on the my left side now, that used to be full of orchids, and I've not seen any. So there is some issues actually with the site, is that over the years myself, not just myself, but others who've been coming down here have noticed a big decrease in the amount of orchids that have actually been seen on site. So back in the 1950s, when they first found this site and discovered how important it was and how many orchids were on site, they said there were thousands of fragrant orchids. And now, I'll show you, unfortunately, even this area, there's no orchids. Nothing. It's just barren. Not a single orchid is growing in here, unfortunately. The entire area is just nothing. Which is really disappointing. It is one of those areas that does need attention from environmental services, to see if there's something that they can do, whether it's just hiring a group to do some work for restoration, because they do have the management plans for this. But it has severely decreased the number of orchids that used to be on here. So we're going to walk you to the soil substrate, and then we're going to walk to the, what I think I think it's a green hellebore, and it's a tiny little patch. The whole site's the only one area I know where it is actually located, and it has been there for quite a few years, and I actually used to wonder what the hell it was previously. I never could figure it out. So I'm going to switch the camera around so you can see Wilson Bridge. So up ahead of us is Wilson's Bridge. That takes you to Farnworth, but if you get to the top there and take a right, it takes you down by the river and takes you back to Crompton Lodges. So there's a lot of giant hogweed down that hillside, all on that side, all on that side. Up here, the kids on their motorbikes and cycling have completely destroyed the area, unfortunately. Lots of nice fly tipping on the SSSI site, and it's actually here where I can show you the substrates. So I'll show you a better one actually. In fact, I'll use that one over there. Have a look around, see if there's any really exposed ones. So, as you can see, where the soil's been exposed quite recently, you can still see the alkali.
Oh yeah.
Where it's exposed underneath. There's 10 metres of this under the soil. And we're only talking probably 2-3 centimetres on top. See, the orange, that's the alkali. And the side's got a great location up ahead, where you can see it much better. And you need to think this entire area is built on 10 metres of what was then toxic waste. And it still is right there. That's a great one. So you can see the soil, you're talking probably about 5 inches actually of soil. And then underneath is there all the alkali waste that they've dumped and made this entire area out of. But like I said, all the trees and the plants are all stunted because of that substrate. So it's not a kind of place where you'll find rabbits on here, but I'd be very surprised if they've dug a dug the homes in there, dug the warrens. Right. So most of this is being used by scrambling bikes, motorbikes. It's crazy that we allow a SSSI site to be used in that way. You've got a few, like, the thing is as well with the orchids, depending on the type of orchid, they can actually hybridise. So, oh, there's a rabbit. It's just up ahead. It's definitely going to run away. Just said about rabbits. There you go. You see it. Nope, I didn't want to do that. And just see it in the middle of the picture now. Little rabbit, there you go. Right in front of me.
Isn't it a baby one, that too?
Yeah. Sorry for the shaky camera, but it's not really made for this. Little baby rabbit. Off it goes. Hello, baby rabbit. Trying to get the zoom back up now.
Is he the baby bunny?
So, little rabbit over there. If you want to see rabbits, great place to bring to see rabbits. Yeah. He's not too bothered by us. Sorry, the group's a little fascinated with the rabbit at the moment. I'm going to make a walk. I think Sam might be trying to take a picture, so he might get annoyed at me now. But I'm hopeful I can find you the green hellebore. So Si's got some pictures of that, he'll probably post them later. So, memory-wise, I'm trying to remember exactly where the green hellebore are. Which I thought was around here. Where's that?
Yeah, under here somewhere.
It's further up here.
Yeah, further down, a bit further down. Yeah, I think it's under
Right, so I'm not great, I've got to admit, I don't know what this plant is. This one. In fact, I don't want to say green hellebore and be wrong, but it kind of looks like it could be to me. This little one. That one. There's only a little patch here, whereas a few of them in this small circle.
Yeah, quite a few.
And so it's similar to the hellebore in the sense that it's made a little circle of the stuff, and it looks very similar to the marsh hellebore, but I believe it could be the green hellebore. Now, I'm not an expert when it comes to orchids, and it's quite difficult to identify orchids, especially on a site that hybridises, and not only hybridises, but creates bonsai versions of every single plant you can think of, because it doesn't grow properly to the height that you'd expect it to grow. So it's difficult enough trying to identify a limestone habitat in the middle of Greater Manchester when we don't have any of this on our local area.
No. And it's one of only 4 sites in the world.
Yeah, so one of the only 4 sites in the world that creates hybridised, dwarfed, mutant plants. And then it's a limestone area in the middle of Greater Manchester when we're not familiar with this kind of habitat at all. So
It's amazing, isn't it? It's really amazing.
It would be brilliant if someone came down and possibly did a study or something like that, though.
well, Oxford University have done studies actually on that specific thing about the hybridisation of the different plants and the potential for it to actually, does it count as a different subspecies to it? So yeah, it's a really interesting area. So I think
There's some more common here.
we've got a few common spotted around here, but I'd really recommend, if you're looking for something nice to be out and about today, to come to an area that's one of the only 4 places in the world. It's almost like a circus of freak shows for wildlife plants, in that you know, the mutated bonsai versions with even the giant hogweed only growing to like 1 foot in height, which actually does need to be treated. and it does need some conservation work. It does need a group to come out here and take down the roseberry willow herb, the brambles, and give it a chance for the orchids to spread again, because like I said, it used to be thousands of orchids on this site. Now we've only got hundreds of orchids, and there should be other species on this site. So we should have the upper marsh orchid, the lower marsh orchid. I'm not very good with identifying orchids, but I think there should be at least like 6 to 7 different species of orchids on this site, and only so far I've found potentially 4 orchids. And now I've only come out in July to do this, so hopefully in May, June there was potentially orchids found, but they're nowhere near in the numbers that they used to be, unfortunately. So it's a little bit disappointing, but it's still an amazing sight to come out if you want to see orchids, because most people will never see them, and they are still everywhere on this site. Even though I want to get a mower and chop down all those brambles and roseberry willow herb and hawthorn. It's right behind me now. This area is covered in hawthorn. About 5 years ago there was no hawthorn here. If that doesn't get tackled and pushed back, then we're going to lose the site. It's inevitable if work isn't done on this site. So I want to thank you for watching this video. I hope it's been informative. I hope it's encouraged you to come out to this site, and if you're interested, then myself and Simon and the others will be at the Garstang allotments today. Garstang allotments is on Garstang Avenue. It's open to the public. You can have about 6 people at the most, with current guidelines, and it's a wood making, food growing. It's shared by everyone, the site, and it's just basically a bit of a community hub based on the south side of Brakemet. So if you know anyone who might be interested in coming down, just spending time, we're thinking even starting like backgammon, chess and boards and stuff like that. We've got to that point of the site, then it'd be great to have you. So thank you for watching the video, and it looks like a beautiful day, so it's a perfect time to get down here. Oh, the cyclists are on their way as well, somewhere back there. Are they there?
Yeah.
Yep, there you go, there's a cyclist. So thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.